Was this the most important album in the Rolling Stones discography? All this and more on Weekend Spin. Released on December 6th, 1968 by Decca Records in the United Kingdom and London Records in the United States, the Rolling Stones' Beggars Banquet was the 7th British and 9th American studio album by the band. And in my opinion, Beggars Banquet is one of the most important albums in the Rolling Stones discography. Prior to Beggars Banquet, the band had released the experimental psychedelic album, Their Satanic Majesty's Request. This album did chart well at first, but its commercial performance declined rapidly and was considered by many fans and journalists alike to be the Stones trying to copy the Beatles' landmark Sgt. Pepper album. By the way, I did post a deep dive video on this album some years ago where I discuss the album in detail and suggest possibilities on how it might have been improved upon. I will leave a link in the description if you're interested in checking it out. I honestly can't help but feel that Their Satanic Majesty's Request alienated a lot of their fans, and that's why I feel that returning to their rhythm and blues roots was quite possibly the best move that the band could have made at that time. It is with Beggars Banquet that the Rolling Stones not only returned to their roots of American rhythm and blues, but also simultaneously found a way to transcend it in their own signature sound that fused traditional American blues, traditional American country music, alongside the current heavy rock, soul, and funk music of the time. Beggars Banquet would feature what have since become two signature songs for the band, Sympathy for the Devil and Street Fighting Man. But it also featured some of the most traditional sounding blues songs that up until that time the Rolling Stones had ever written and recorded. This would also be the first Rolling Stone album produced by Jimmy Miller. In my opinion, Jimmy Miller's production played a huge role in helping the band craft their signature sound throughout the late 60s and early 70s. The other key contributor being what I believe to be the simple fact that Mick Jagger and Keith Richards were reaching a level of confidence in their songwriting partnership that saw them at the height of their powers for the next several years. Let's dive into the tracks. Track 1, Sympathy for the Devil.
Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth.
This song is largely attributed to Mick Jagger, who originally is said to have written it more in the style of a Dylan-like folk tune. This would be before Keith Richards suggested changing the tempo and adding percussion, giving it more of a Brazilian samba feel. Lyrically, the song takes the first-person view of the devil, taking the listener on a historical tour of human atrocities, stating that in each case, he was there. I personally was raised in a very conservative religious family. When I first heard this song, I took its lyrics to be very literal. However, as I have grown older, I can't help but feel that each time the devil says, "I was there" in the song, and "hope you guess my name," that he is actually pointing the finger back at us, the listener, as if to say, you say that I am evil, but you, in other words, humanity, are the ones who are actually committing all these acts of evil. Sympathy for the Devil's infectious dance rhythms and its very hypnotic ooh-hoo sing-along is what draws most listeners in. It's the song's sugar-sweet topping, so to speak. But it's the power of Mick Jagger's lyrics that will keep you thinking about it long after the album's over. After this signature song, Side 1 features 4 very acoustic blues-based songs: No Expectations, Dear Doctor, Parachute Woman, and Jigsaw Puzzle. Side 2 will feature 2 more, Prodigal Son and Factory Girl. These tracks not only feature the Rolling Stones returning to their roots of American rhythm and blues, but also diving deeper into those roots in a way that none of their previous recordings had reflected. Robert Plant of Led Zeppelin once stated that we, meaning Led Zeppelin, wanted to sound like four black men from Chicago. It's with Beggar's Banquet, and in particular the tracks that I've just mentioned, that the Stones dig deep into the African American roots of rhythm and blues music. It is as black as they have ever sounded. Track 2, No Expectations.
I've got no expectations to pay.
This is a profoundly melancholy song. Part of this is because the track features one of Brian Jones's last major musical contributions before leaving the band, but also because of Mick Jagger's very emotive and powerful vocal performance. His lyrics about a love that is no longer, and a man who moves on from it by literally moving on via train, are filled with so much pain and sadness. Enhancing this melancholy even further is the very evocative and building piano from Nicky Hopkins. This piano enters at the halfway mark, and it provides a separate color of paint as it intertwines with the slide guitar of Brian Jones. Bassist Bill Wyman and Charlie Watts wisely keep their musical contributions to a bare minimum for this song. Wyman only hitting the most necessary of accents, and Charlie Watts performing a simple claves-kept beat. This minimalism only adds to the profound sense of loneliness that No Expectations embodies. Now, earlier, I mentioned how traditionally blues this track sounds. I tried listening to the song and imagining it without Brian Jones's slide guitar solo, and I have to say that Jones is about 80% of the reason why it does sound so blues. Track 3, Dear Doctor.
Oh, help me, please, doctor, I'm damaged.
Dear Doctor is also about losing a love, but this time, that emotion is tempered with a strong dose of hillbilly inflection and sense of humor. The lyrics tell the story of a young man discovering that his fiancée has abandoned him on their wedding day, much to his relief, of course, when he discovers a Dear John letter in his coat pocket. Mick Jagger affects a southern hillbilly accent that he will use again in future recordings like Girl with Faraway Eyes, and also affects a humorous female voice when he reads the lyrics. Darling, I'm sorry to hurt you, but I've no courage to speak to your face. But I'm down in Virginia with your cousin Lou. There'll be no wedding today. Musician and music writer Bill Janovitz of the band Buffalo Tom wrote of this song, the band manages to sound authentically old-time and primitive. Infusing traditional country with traditional blues, this song feels authentically of a time now long gone. And when I listen to it, I can almost smell the moonshine. Infusing traditional country with traditional blues, this song feels authentically of a time that is now long gone. And when I listen to it, I can almost taste the moonshine. Track 4, Parachute Woman.
Parachute woman, land on me tonight.
Unlike the last two tracks, this track makes use of electric guitar in a strong way, and yet it still has that dark acoustic blues sound. It still feels very traditional, and just like the last two tracks, it also feels like it's echoing from a bygone era. This song also features a significant contribution from Brian Jones, as he plays both acoustic rhythm and harmonica, with Keith Richards playing some very fierce electric lead guitar. Mick Jagger steps in on harmonica at the end, adding to the song's dark and haunting tone. But riding on top of all of this is Jagger, giving a very strong vocal performance, while his lyrics feature some of the most thinly veiled sexual innuendo that I think I've ever heard from him. Finally, we end side 1 with track 5, Jigsaw Puzzle.
Try to do this jigsaw puzzle, so it rains and
While also deeply rooted in Southern Black American blues, Jigsaw Puzzle does feature some modern musical influences, particularly in its lyrics, which have been described as surreal and even Dylan-esque. Honestly, I'm not sure that I am the right person to make Dylan comparisons, but I do have to say that I really like Mick Jagger's lyrics on this particular song. I can't speak for Mick Jagger personally, but I do know that Keith Richards was definitely a fan of Dylan, and I don't feel there's anything wrong with mirroring your own musical influences. This is what all musicians and songwriters do. We learn from the music we are surrounded by, and hopefully can make something original out of it. In particular, I like how Jagger calls out his own bandmates and himself at the ending of this song. Oh, the singer looks angry at being thrown to the lions. By this time, Jagger had already had a number of experiences that I'm sure made him feel this way. He was definitely drawing from his own experiences. Side 2 opens with track 6, another signature track entitled Street Fighting Man.
Everywhere I hear the sound of marching.
A song that radio stations in the United States boycotted due to its lyrics that were considered to be subversive and about violent revolution. In response to this allegation, Mick Jagger stated, "Of course it's subversive. It's stupid to think you can start a revolution with a record. I wish you could." Originally entitled Did Everyone Pay Their Dues, the song's original lyrics were said to be about adult brutality. By the way, you can hear this alternate version on YouTube. Jagger would begin to rewrite the lyrics, however, after he attended a 1968 anti-war rally at London's US Embassy, and after watching news reports of rising violence among student rioters on Paris's left bank. Jagger has mentioned that he felt that London was relatively quiet when compared to France at that time. Thus the lyrics, well, what can a poor boy do, except to sing for a rock and roll band? 'Cause in sleepy London town, there's just no place for a street fighting man. These lyrics also have a not so subtle call out to Martha and the Vandellas track, Dancing in the Street. Regardless, however, this song's approach to heavy rock will help define the Rolling Stones' sound in the years to come. After that, we return back to the music roots of the blues with track 7, Prodigal Son. Prodigal Son is a cover song originally by Robert Wilkins, sometimes referred to as Reverend Robert Wilkins, who was 72 years old at the time that Beggars, Banquet was released. Robert Wilkins' original song was 10 minutes long and featured many more verses than the Stones' remake, who edited it down to just under 3 minutes. In spite of this, I think that the Rolling Stones did right by the original, and I invite you to compare the two as they are both available to hear online. Just like he did with Dear Doctor, Mick Jagger plays vocal chameleon and does his best to affect the voice of a black Southern blues singer. Interesting fact here, the album's original Toilet cover, which was originally banned, properly credited this song to Robert Wilkins. The later, revised white cover changed the songwriting credits to Jagger and Richards. I'm guessing this is more the fault of the record label than the band themselves. Next is track 8, Stray Cat Blues.
I don't want your ID.
Honestly, I am surprised that this track did not generate more controversy. Maybe it's because the song was never a big hit, or maybe it's also because his vocals are at times a little bit unintelligible. The song's lyrics are from the perspective of an adult male trying to lure a 15-year-old girl into a sexual encounter. The Wikipedia article on this track describes the girl as being a groupie, which in turn implies that the character in the story could very well be Mick Jagger himself. But this description is completely inaccurate, as there is nothing in the lyrics stating or even implying that she is any kind of a musician's groupie. In the song's last verse, our main character says, "You say you got a friend, and she's wilder than you. Why don't you bring her upstairs? If she's so wild, then she can join in too." Which implies possibly that this isn't the first time that these two have had an encounter. Either way, it's surprising and not a little bit ironic that this song lyrically got past the censorship filters of the day, whereas the original album Toilet cover didn't. This track features Keith Richards playing all electric guitars, piano from Nicky Hopkins, and Brian Jones on mellotron. And just like Street Fighting Man, Stray Cat Blues fits into the blues rock, hard rock sound that would largely define the Rolling Stones as they moved into the 70s. Track 9, entitled Factory Girl, delves deep into blues and folk music.
Waiting for a factory girl.
This track also features a very musically diverse lineup of players, with Mick Jagger on vocals, Keith Richards on acoustic guitar, Ghanaian percussionist Rocky Dijon, hopefully I've said that correctly, on conga drums, Rick Gretsch of the band Family on fiddle violin, singer-songwriter Dave Mason on mandolin, and Charlie Watts on tabla, which, by the way, he played using sticks versus the traditional way where you use your hands. Richards said of the song in 2003, "To me, Factory Girl felt like something like Molly Malone, an Irish jig, one of those ancient Celtic things that emerge from time to time, or an Appalachian song. Just like with Dear Doctor and Prodigal Son, I feel like the Stones again managed to sound authentically primitive with this track, and authentic to the earlier musical time period they're trying to emulate, and yet it's still the Rolling Stones." I am, of course, only referring to the music when I make this comparison, since the song's lyrics feature more modern references. This brings us to the last track on the album, track 9, entitled Salt of the Earth. Side note: Salt of the Earth is the second official Rolling Stone track to feature a lead vocal by Keith Richards, who opens the song. Along with the rest of the band, Salt of the Earth features Nicky Hopkins on piano and the Watts Street Gospel Choir on background vocals. Brian Jones was not present at these sessions. This song has a very anthemic-like quality to it, but lyrically, I found it to be a bit of a contradiction. Reportedly, Mick Jagger was attempting to write a working-class anthem. And on a casual listen, you might think this too. But in the opening verse, Keith Richards sings, "Raise your glass to the good and the evil. Let's drink to the salt of the earth." It's as if to say that both the good and the evil of the world make up the salt of the earth. Also, during the song's bridge, Mick Jagger sings, "When I search a faceless crowd, a swirling mess of gray and black and white, they don't look real to me. In fact, they look so strange," admitting to some disconnect between himself and the working class people that he is supposedly paying tribute to. Later in verse 3, there is some empathy for who they are singing about with the lines, "Raise your glass to the hardworking people. Let's drink to the uncounted heads. Let's think of the wavering millions who need leading but got gamblers instead." There is a certain empathy to this part of the lyric, but you could also interpret it as having a somewhat of a mocking tone. On verse 4, though, we hear, "Spare a thought for the stay-at-home voter. Empty eyes gaze at strange beauty shows." It's as if to say that these salt-of-the-earth types are too distracted by media to understand what is truly going on around them. I'm not saying this isn't true. What I am saying is this doesn't really feel that much like an anthem to the working class. In fact, you might even say it's a bit of an indictment. However, when Mick Jagger and Keith Richards performed this song as a duet for the 2001 concert for New York, commemorating the fallen of September 11, 2001, the lyrics were changed. "Let's drink to the good and the evil" was changed to "Let's drink to the good, not the evil." And the lyrics in the bridge were changed to, "When I look into a faceless crowd, a swirling mass of gray and black and white, they look so real to me. No, they don't look so strange." This song makes good use of the gospel blues style that the Stones will use again when they record the track "You Can't Always Get What You Want" on 1969's Let It Bleed. Looking back on this release, I have to think that producer Jimmy Miller was probably the closest thing the Stones ever had to what the Beatles had with George Martin, a producer who really elevated their potential. When you look back at the period of time that he collaborated with them, it includes Beggars, Banquet, Let It Bleed, Sticky Fingers, Exile on Main Street, and Goat's Head Soup. And I'm not saying that the Rolling Stones did not make good albums after this, nor am I saying that they did not make good albums prior. And there are certainly tracks both prior and after this time period that you could say became signature songs for the band. But I would put forth that when we think of the Rolling Stones, most of what fans consider their best work is during this time period. Also, I would say that most of what we think of as their signature songs also come from this time period too. Of course, if you'd like to debate me on this, feel free to do so in the comments. I'll look forward to hearing what you have to say. Just remember, it's okay to disagree about music. Currently, I own this album in 3 formats. I have my CD copy from the Rolling Stones in Mono box set that I got a number of years ago. I also have the mono mix in the current, or more, I should say, more recent repressing of the Rolling Stones in Mono on vinyl. This, of course, features the uncensored cover. And I've also got a vintage 60s copy of the album featuring the censored cover in stereo. This is, in my opinion, the best of them. This is TJR. Thank you so much for joining me here on Weekend Spin. In just a few moments, I'll be revealing the title of next week's album. But first, I want to just say that if you like this content and want to see more, please do me a big favor and just click like. It means so much. It helps so much if you do this. Also, I'd love it if you clicked subscribe and hit the bell notification icon so you never miss a video. We do have a Patreon page with a Patreon community, and I do create exclusive weekly videos just for the patron supporters. Go to patreon.com/TJR, the original. So I hope you'll join us next week when our weekend spin is going to be American Woman by the Guess Who. We'll look forward to seeing you there. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.